on this instrument, I'm using a 30 wound string for the bass, a 22 for the middle string, and I'll be using two 14s for the top string. This is for a 20-inch scale, using a longer scale than you would use thinner strings. Shorter scale, you can use thicker strings for the same tuning. So we start with 30 wound string. So this, I count this as a medium set of strings. Put it right to. So thread the string through. I'm going to pull it back about the length of the headstock. And then we're going to wind this away from the headstock once. And we're going to tuck this under. Cut off the excess string. So ideally we have some windings above the string hole, at least one turn, and then the next we go above the string and then below the string. We want the string to be winding down towards the headstock, especially on a guitar instrument like this with a flat headstock, because it creates a bit of downward pressure. I mean, we could have a metal, we could have a thing like on a Fender guitar holding the string down, but I would ideally not have one if I can help it. With the two top strings, what we're going to do is thread them in at the same time so they're sharing a hole. An attempt. You can arrange them how you want. Tension will pull in as soon as the strings are done up. I'm going to do the outer one first in this example. Exactly the same as the other strings. So we go once around above the string. And now we're going to go under the string. Should lock it in place. Same for this one. Give it a bit of, loosen it 3 or 4 centimeters. Off the string. Okay, that's the initial strings are on. We're nowhere near in tune. We're going to put the bridge, temporary bridge on now. Okay, so we got the tricky part now is to get the strings level. Good. What we want to do is replicate the same spacing as on the rest of the neck. So again, that's 11.5. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to use my, just going to make a little groove here. And we can measure 11.5. And again, this is only a test bridge. We're not worried about getting this exactly. This just needs to be roughly there. It's not perfectly centered. Again, we're just using this as a test dummy bridge. Once we've decided we've got the tuning where we want. Now this is where we have to check the nut, because what often happens is we need to adjust the height of the nut. We'll take a piece of paper. This is the paper of the string. Let's have a look. Yeah, so here we can see that these grooves here need to be slightly lower. Yeah, so these grooves need to go down probably 0.5 millimeter, maybe slightly less on this one. So I've taken the nut off. And I just need to take it down just very slightly. So we're not far off. Again, it's like tiny amounts slot. This is a sumac nut slot for the size. So this one is very close. So once we're ready with the nut, we're just going to put some graphite in the slots. Looks messy, but just to help with smooth running. To secure it in place, we put a tiny dot of super glue. Position, hold it in place while the super glue sets. The low bass string is tuned to a D. The middle string is tuned to an A. And the upper string is tuned to a D, high D. It's a pretty good sound for an unamplified instrument. If you have any dud notes on your fingerboard, it may be that you have to go back to the fret dressing stage where you put masking tape on the fingerboard and you file the frets down again colour each fret with a marker pen, and then file it down and repeat the process. You may need to go back to that stage. And it may be even I may have these strings on for a week and then decide I want to do a final dressing stage. That sometimes happens as well. So we'll see how we go. Once we get the final bridge on, it should be almost good to go. The string's been on a couple of days now, and I'm happy with the height of this particular bridge. I might make the next one maybe 0.5 millimeter or 1 millimeter higher to begin with, just to see if that works a little bit better. This is probably as low as I can go. So what I do is I take a measurement, caliper to 0, use the depth setting on the bottom to measure the depth. I'm getting about 8.9. That's my bridge height on this particular example. That seems to work well for the strings. As I say, I'll probably do a 9 or 9.5 millimeter final bridge, and then if I can sand that down if I need to, if I feel that's too high. But I'll just add an extra millimeter just to give me a bit of working room. To make the final bridge, I'm going to glue a piece of scrap ebony to the top. I've got a bag of old pieces of ebony from other projects, old piano keys and things like that. So I'm going to glue this on, make up a little sandwich, and then I'm going to sand this to the size required. So it's the same length, about 50 millimeters. Bear in mind, this is a little bit wider spacing than the standard model, so the 3-string for sure. Bit of tight bond glue. Make sure there's an even layer. A couple of clamps. We'll come back to that to do our final bridge. We'll sand this once this is dry. In the meantime, we've just got a few. I had some photocopies made of the edging because on this particular instrument, it's an old box that's been worn away. It's missing half its edging at the bottom, so I am going to stick some of these replacements. They're not exact match because this is gold and this is like photocopied laser print. But I will stick these on just to complete it, so it doesn't look so bare on the bottom. There's a lot of worn edges on this particular box. If you've lost a lot of the tape around here, you can actually just use washi tape. You can get washi tape in gold foil strips that you can just stick on. That's a lot easier than this. This is a little bit more complicated. I'm just trying to replicate the look rather than the actual. I don't have gold ink on this, so this is a photocopy of gold ink. So it's a slightly different tone to the original, but it's just to cover the bare wood, really. I'm covering the corners. That's the last thing. I didn't show this, but I just put an end pin here. There's a space here. On the other instrument, there's a heel block here, so you can't put an end pin easily there, although you can put it on the neck, I guess. It's just a nice place to put it. There's a good block underneath, so it's a very solid place to put an end pin, and it matches the end pin on the other side. I've got some paper loose here. I'm just going to use the same slightly watered down PVA glue just to glue this back into position. Just get that. Here we're going to what I'm going to do. Okay, so we have our bridge blank. We just need to sand this square, and then we use the measurements from this bridge to make this bridge. So we saw off the ebony. We want to make this bridge the same height, plus maybe 1 millimeter as the original bridge. For this, I'm going to set the marking gauge to 9mm and maybe add 9.6. So we use the ebony faceplate. Again, it doesn't matter whether you're just using a piece of beech or maple. I just have loads of scrap pieces of ebony, so that's why I use ebony. I've had a load of Edwardian piano keys that have lasted me for ages. Plus I've got scraps of bog oak and tiny pieces of ebony from fingerboards. So if you let that into the knife line, both sides, mark the center line, and we will hollow out just a tiny little bit here. So we want to leave that line visible. The aim is to get a nice, once we've got it to that size, you can either saw off the waste or use the disc sander to shape it. We won't shape the ends just yet. First of all, we're going to make sure we've got it centered on, and then we'll mark out the string positions roughly, and then we'll work out how best. It's normally like this, just a tiny little, on this particular model because it's a 4-string, we just want to chamfer the ends off. But first of all, we get it to the triangle shape. We are just going to relieve slightly this part under here. Relief cuts. So you can use a knife to do this and do the knife away from you. Okay, and then just double check on your instrument neck. What you make sure is that the bridge has good clearance either side. So we can probably carve off 4mm from either end. This could be sanded off on the sander, or you can use your knife just to whittle. If you want to finish off with sandpaper or leave it up to the knife, it's up to you. So you can also take the file. You can find your 180 sandpaper. do tend to finish off with a knife if I can. And these sharp edges, just a very tiny finishing off here. Using the knife as a scraper at this point. If you want to seal this with a single coat of oil, that's a good idea. If your wood is maple or beech or something. Or you can just put a coat of beeswax on if you just want to give it a simple sealing coat that you can use straight away. This is some beeswax polish. To fit the new bridge and replace this one, we can use, depending on the height, you can use a pencil. You can get a pencil behind the bridge, or a dowel stick. This is a dowel stick. I'm going to try and use a dowel stick. We don't put too much pressure on, but we're just trying to raise it off. What we'd like to do is a bit of subterfuge, just sneak the new bridge in exactly the same position. Now we are going to have to move things around again. That's just the way things go. Okay. We just want to just lay, and we are going to reshape this in a minute. But we want to check first the intonation, so we check the 7th fret, or midway point. We play the harmonic. That's so the fretted note, the harmonic is higher, and this is lower, which means we can push that forward. Get in there. If it's too sharp, push it back. Okay, middle one. Bit too sharp, so that's going to angle that slightly back. Same for the upper strings. So touch above the 7th fret, mid-octave fret. It's very fractionally sharp. Just set it back. Selection. Okay, so we've got the rough bridge position. Now we can worry about setting out the string. So we can do the same spacing that's at the nut on the bridge on this example. So check that it's in central position before we start. You take a knife and I'm going to make a tiny notch. At this point I just want to do it so that the string can rest upon that. So the outer strings are now going to rest on that mark I've made, which gives me a chance to center the bridge a bit better. And separate the string, that is. It's just a tiny notch. Okay. There we go. Okay, with the bridge centered, now we worry about the middle string. So we know that that was 11.5, and that is 2.8. Again, we double check our measurements. So we take our 2.8. Now visually it must be parallel. And when you're happy, you can rest. Create a knife line in first. That will sit in nicely. Okay, what we want the string to be dead middle now. And you can do this visually, or you can double check with measurements, depending on your eyesight. And you can always change this and make another bridge if you want. Okay, so we've got the basic bridge just notched in gently for now. Remember, this is very slightly higher than normal, and we can deepen these grooves a little bit once we get going. But I do like to normally leave this for a couple of days, tuned up to pitch, before I do any more interference. And this may not be the final bridge. I may shape another one if I'm not happy, but that's where we are for now.